Welcome, my friends, to the Bob and Brad podcast, produced by Bob and Brad, the two most famous physical therapists on the internet. I am Bob. I'm exactly one half of the Bob and Brad team, and my guest today is Jeannie Di Bon. She actually is an expert on Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, which is a type of syndrome that evolves among many things, but hypermobility. In other words, your joints are double jointed, if we use a layperson's term. So I want to have you join me in welcoming Jeannie to the program. Welcome to the show, Jeannie Di Bon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Really super excited to have you here because we have, over the past 5 to 10 years, had several requests for doing a show on Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. And I never felt comfortable because I never treated anybody with it. So I've treated people with hypermobility, but not EDS. So if you met someone who was just diagnosed with EDS, what are the things you'd want them to know?
Yeah, so obviously it can be quite scary for some people. So I'd want them to know that it can seem like this mass of information, and oftentimes we don't know where to turn. But I really want people to know that there is hope, because we can often feel quite desperate, especially if we've gone a long time without a diagnosis and we've been in pain for a long, long time.
Right.
But I'm a firm believer in that there's always something we can do. No matter where you are today, there's always something we can do to make that situation better. So I would say seek out the support that you need, seek out the team that you need, and definitely don't ever give up hope.
Great advice. So what type of things should a person with EDS never do?
So, things like contact sports, for example, could be quite tricky.
Makes sense, right?
Because if you're, say, American football,
right,
soccer, high impact. If you're someone who subluxes or dislocates joints, obviously you're going to put yourself at a greater injury risk. And with EDS, when you get injured, unfortunately, we take a lot longer time to heal than other people. So, be careful with things like high impact sports, like high intensity training, jumping. Some people say don't run, but I do know people who like to run. So the thing with EDS, it's worth mentioning, is that it's such an individual thing. Like every single one of us is different. And some people can do some things. And the syndrome itself is on a scale. So you can get people who are very mildly impacted to moderate, and then you can get the people who are unfortunately severely impacted and sort of wheelchair or housebound, bedbound. So it is a scale. So some people who are mildly affected might be able to do, things like running, and so it's very individual.
Does it tend to be progressive? I mean, it starts off, it gets worse. I mean, I suppose it might depend on hormone surges, right?
Yeah, it can depend on so many things. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's progressive. I think the reason that you see, unfortunately, people who are struggling a lot is because of this delay in diagnosis and not getting the support that we need. So, people go many, many years and their pain gets worse because they don't know what's wrong and they're not doing the right exercises and not getting the right support. And obviously things deteriorate. But I wouldn't necessarily call it a progressive disease if you can manage it.
Sure, gotcha. So when you have EDS, can you perform strengthening exercises, or is there a limit to that?
So strengthening exercises are actually really, really important for us. Because we need to build muscle tone to help support the joints. But we want to do that strengthening at the right time. So oftentimes people are given strengthening exercises too soon. So they go to see a physical therapist or a physiotherapist, and they're given, high repetition, strengthening, loaded exercises straight away. And our tissue and it's too soon. So our tissue is quite delicate. It's quite pro-inflammatory. So it doesn't take much for us to get irritated and angry. So I recommend, yes, we want to do strengthening, but we've got to build you up. We go slow, we go low. And gradually, as your tissue tolerance builds, we start introducing strengthening work, because it is an important element.
That makes
but
sense.
If you go, you hear people talking about boom and bust of EDS exercise, because people do loads. They go, they're given these exercises and they do them because, we like to do our exercises that we've been told to do.
Right.
But because they're too much, you get a massive flare up in pain or fatigue, irritation, and then people don't want to do their exercises. People become scared of the exercise. We get fear of movement, anxiety about the movement. So people end up not doing the exercise. And then obviously things decondition more. And so we get in this vicious circle. So getting the right appropriate level of exercise is actually really important, but not being pushed too soon.
Yeah, even if you proceed at the right level, I mean, can you get, is there a cap? I mean, you don't want to be a power lifter, right?
No, although I do actually know one person with EDS who does do powerlifting, which would seem like a really strange thing to be doing, because, I think, it comes down to the technique. If someone's got good technique,
perfect,
weight,
right.
Yeah. So you're not locking your joints when you're lifting the weight.
Right.
So, you're going to the gym and doing some weights is actually not a bad thing. But is your technique correct? So we don't want to be locking joints. We don't want to be doing too heavy load too soon. We don't want to be doing too many reps too soon. It's really about learning to listen to our bodies and taking care that way.
And again, that individual nature of EDS.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you allude to the fact that pain is a big issue with EDS or even hypermobility. I guess you talked about that. Why is that? And the tissues are not prepared, right? And
so
inflammatory.
Yes. So there's obviously pain is a very complex topic, isn't it? And it can, the pain can be coming from so many different things. But in my experience, obviously the joint laxity, joint instability, the fact that we have poor postural tone, poor muscle tone. So we tend to hang in our joints a lot of the time.
Yes.
We don't have good posture. We don't have good proprioception. So we also have proprioception is that ability to know where your body is in space. And oftentimes, because we lack proprioception, we lack control. So we'll do big ranges of movement without control. And then, of course, we can strain and injure ourselves. And that obviously is a cause of pain as well. You get other things like visceral pain because the organs are involved. You might get referred pain from the viscera as well. Pain on walking, flat feet, overpronated feet are a big issue. So if your feet are obviously collapsed because gravity is allowing them to collapse into the ground and you don't have that support network, even walking and that connection all the way up through the knees, the hips to the lower back, all of those sorts of things are going to be causing us pain. So I like to look at the whole body from foot to head to help people find that connection.
Sure. I had a surgeon on the podcast. He's really quite renowned. And he said 20% of his women with back pain is due to hypermobility in the SI. And actually will refer pain all the way down the leg.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. So, yeah. SI dysfunction is quite a big issue as well in this population. People say, the SI joint can't slip and things like that. But actually, if you're extremely hypermobile, I see a lot of SI dysfunction. And like you say, it causes so much pain.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah. So we treat that in a very special way. We have to make sure so that when I'm working with people, we keep the pelvis as one piece. So we're not doing exercises where your legs are going in opposite directions, and we keep you really stable around the pelvis to build a bit of that stability.
Well, I can imagine a doctor would see this diagnosis and go, "Oh, you should try Pilates," but Pilates, just regular Pilates. How is that for someone with EDS?
Yeah, well, so there are two things. You have to remember that Pilates is a method. So it was created by Joseph Pilates. It's a method. And like any method, it has its limitations. It has great things about it, but it does have limitations. And the other thing, originally, obviously, there was Joseph Pilates. Now you have hundreds and hundreds of different schools of teachers and different thought processes. So not all Pilates. Yeah. So Pilates has evolved a lot, and not all Pilates is equal. Yeah. And so, and there's a lot about obviously I trained in it initially, there was a lot about it that I did like, the control element of it, and, starting to feel connected with my body again. But there are a lot of things about it that just weren't right. They weren't working for me. And that's when I decided to step back and say, okay, what do I actually need? What's missing here? Why am I still getting, discomfort when I'm doing some of these exercises? And again, I just, because of the individual nature of Pilates, EDS, there might be people listening who say, well, actually, I am going to Pilates. I have EDS and I love it. And that's the case. For some people, fantastic. They do their Pilates, they love it. The people I tend to see, unfortunately, are getting injured in classes because things are going too fast. The problem with going to a class is that obviously the classes progress. So you might start off a beginner, but you're expected to kind of get more and more challenging each week. And for EDS, sometimes we have to go slow. We can't keep up. And then we start to try too hard, and then we end up straining ourselves and hurting ourselves. So individual one-to-one sessions is probably a good place to start if people are looking to do sort of regular Pilates.
So your version is geared towards someone with EDS or pain, or pain, and or hypermobility, right?
Yes, exactly. That's right.
So what is your first goal in teaching someone with Pilates?
So I call my method sort of a modified Pilates. I call it the integral movement method. And when I was doing my initial Pilates, and I stepped back and I thought, well, what do I need? And what's really interesting about living with a condition like EDS is that we often, for various reasons, anxiety, stress, instability, we end up bracing quite a lot of the time. So I used to hold myself very, very tightly and brace my abdominals and brace, because that was my way of kind of feeling in control and wanting to stabilize myself.
Gotcha.
So I had a lot of nervous and muscular tension in my body. And then going to Pilates and being pushed and forced to do more sort of bracing activities actually was making it worse. So I said, okay, what do we want to do? And this is what I do with all my clients. We step back and we look at breathing first, and we start to calm the nervous system down. So we start to release some of that muscular tension and that nervous tension. So breath is the first step, and that's all detailed in my book, the Hypermobility Without Tears book. I go through the different stages. So breath is the first one, and then relaxation, because so many of us are fearful of movement, are scared of movement. And I need people to really start to feel safe and feel relaxed in their own body, so that they can start to overcome that fear and start to enjoy movement rather than it being a sort of a chore that we have to do. I want people to love it.
Yeah, because Pilates has a mind-body connection, and obviously address that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you can't separate the two, right? So mind, body. And what I've found is that if the mind isn't on board first, so if people aren't present, feeling safe, relaxed, the body following is going to be very, very difficult. Because if you think someone comes to me and they're very tense and nervous and anxious and they're not breathing properly, it's really hard to teach exercise because they're coming from this place of tension. So I call it unwinding. I want to unwind the tension, then start to introduce very gentle, safe movements so that they can start to feel in control of their body. And then over time, we start to build that up. But again, on an individual basis. So there's not one size fits all with EDS.
Gotcha. I'm curious. I had a couple of people on who talked about breathing, and they were big advocates of nasal breathing as opposed to mouth breathing, because you're taking nitric oxide, and there's a whole mechanism that it makes it better. So
yes, yeah. Ideally, the gold standard, if we can, is nasal breathing as opposed to mouth breathing, especially with, for anyone, but especially for EDS, because one of the things that goes with EDS is POTS, so postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And if we're taking in too much oxygen and too much air through the mouth, that can cause all sorts of imbalances in the body and palpitations.
Yes.
And so one of the things I do is to teach people how to breathe with not taking in so much air, and really soft, quiet, gentle breath work.
Yes.
And you have to do it carefully, because for some people it's too much, right? Going and being too present in their body can be a bit overwhelming, and it makes them stressed. So again, you've got to treat each individual person and see the best route forward for them.
So, this is going to obviously help with some of the mental health issues that show with EDS,
yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. There's research now. We have a psychiatrist in the UK called Dr. Jessica Eccles, who's done a lot of research. It's just been published about there is a link between anxiety and hypermobility. So there is an actual link that the people she studied, the people with anxiety tended to be hypermobile. One of the reasons for this, she believes, is that we're more aware of our bodily functions. So we're more aware of our heartbeat, we're just more sensitive.
Sure.
And so if our heart rate starts going up, we can feel that. And that can cause a panic in some people. And it just generally creates this whole aura of anxiety. So that's one of the reasons.
Kind of a cascade of effects.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yes. But of course, sadly, one of the other reasons people have anxiety is because of this sort of long journey to their diagnosis and going to see lots of different doctors. And unfortunately, some people aren't believed, some people are dismissed, some people are told they're hypochondriacs, some people are told they're making this up. Unfortunately, this goes on. And so, there are people out there suffering from, what they call medical PTSD.
Right.
And that's a real thing.
I believe it 100%.
Yeah. So there's, multiple reasons for that anxiety, I believe, but it definitely exists.
It's definitely justified, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that posture is a big concern. Is that addressed through Pilates, your Pilates program?
Yeah, absolutely. So posture is like the sixth element of my hypermobility movement method. It comes at the end because I don't think you can teach posture. Intellectually, we all know what a good posture is. So I could teach you how to stand. The problem is most people would then brace and fix themselves into this perfect posture. And that would just put more tension in their body. And it wouldn't last because I've just told you what to do. Your body doesn't really understand what good posture is. So in my method, it comes right at the end so that it's more of an integrated feeling. You understand you've got good support through your feet. You understand alignment. You understand where your bones should be, and you can control it. And that way, it's much more natural rather than me just fixing you into a position. So yes, posture is super important because as I said earlier, typically what we like to do is hang in our joints. So we'll kind of hang back in our hips and, lock those joints out. And of course, when you lock your joints, your muscles don't have to work anyway. You're just hanging on those joints. And so we've got to get rid of all those patterns and replace them with healthy patterns to have healthy posture.
Do you make use of any equipment now? I know Pilates does sometimes, but
yeah. So yes, in the studio. So I have a studio. So we have all the studio equipment. So people might have heard of a reformer machine, which is basically spring loaded, and it's great for hypermobility and people who are in pain, because a lot of the things you can do lying down on your back. Now, resistance work, so it's spring loaded, so people are getting resistance work and support. And actually, resistance work is really, really important for us, because the one thing we absolutely hate is eccentric muscle control, because we'd rather just give into gravity and fall into a position.
Oh, wow.
So if we can teach people how to eccentrically control their muscles against a resistance, it's one of the best things we could be doing. So yeah, the Pilates equipment is fantastic. If people don't have access to a studio with equipment, I use things like bands, TheraBands, soft Pilates balls, hand weights, whatever, there's lots of things you can do at home. You don't need expensive equipment, and it's just as good.
Yeah, and I'm going to mention you have that YouTube channel that covers some of the exercises. What do you cover on there, basically? I mean, just present some initial types.
Yes, I mean, I try to think of all the things that a hypermobile body could possibly need. So we've got short little video classes, things like 5 a day for shoulders, 5 a day for your knees, 5 a day. So 5 minutes, 5 exercises a day. Some are just tips. So I'm talking about different things. I've started doing live videos on there. So once a month I do a live class. So just which is great fun. Just last week, we did the truth about stability. So what is stability if you're hypermobile? And I've done the truth about stretching, and I've done the truth about rib subluxations, which again are another big issue in our population. So yeah, over 100 videos on there with lots of different topics.
But people can take, as you mentioned, your class remotely.
Yes.
So
yes,
how does it work?
have.
Is it just one-on-one, or is it one participating in many, or?
No, so I only do one-on-one classes now.
Gotcha.
So yes, I have clients all over the world. So lots of clients in America, in the States, which is lovely. So fantastic. But yes, so we work on Zoom, and just like we're talking now. So people move and I can watch them move, and it works really, really well. So, and then I have clinics in London, and I see people face to face in London as well.
Gotcha. Do you have staff too?
No, it's just me. It's just me. I'm a lone ranger. Yeah.
Now you also have an app.
I do.
The Zebra Club app.
That's right. Yes. So this is like my heart's work. The app launched in November last year, although the Zebra Club has been going for 2 years, but it was just on a web-based program. But in November, it became an app. And the Zebra Club is really, really unique, I think, compared to other apps, because we've got classes all designed for hypermobility and EDS. By category. For example, we were mentioning fatigue is a big issue. So we've got a whole section of classes for when you're feeling fatigued. We've got a whole section of classes for pain management. We've got a whole section for stability. So I've categorized them into different areas. So people can work at home with, like I said, very little equipment needed. But apart from the classes, the thing that makes us really, really unique and what's so important for our community is we have an inbuilt community within the Zebra Club. Now, a lot of people, because of this issue with not getting diagnosed, not having the answers, a lot of people have never even spoken to someone else who has EDS. They've never been validated. They've never had someone say, I've got that as well, or I believe you. Sure. So I wanted a community. So think of it as an internal Facebook page. So it's private, so only members can see it. And you can go on and you can chat to other members, or you can ask me questions. And I'm on there every day answering members' questions. And every month we do live events as well. So people can come on, we do meet and greets on Zoom. So we break up into little groups and people can chat to other zebras. Can I just mention why it's called Zebra? Because maybe people don't know why I'm talking about zebras. And so there's two sides to this. So first of all, two zebras stripes are never the same. Sure. So two people with EDS will never have the same presentation.
By the way, we say zebra.
I know, and I much prefer your way of saying it. I do. We call it the zebra over here, but gotcha. Zebra is much nicer. So no two zebras are ever the same. Sure. But the other side of it, unfortunately, isn't quite so nice, is that in medical school, people are taught, if you hear hoofbeats, look for horses.
Right.
Yeah, don't look for the zebra, because you're not looking for the unusual. And so, the zebra is a symbol of all kinds of rare diseases now, because we're not getting diagnosed. And so the Zebra Club is a place for us to come together. And it's for people who want to feel supported, who want to learn to move, who want to move pain-free, who want to have a better quality of life, and have confidence in themselves. Because so many of us have been lacking that self-belief that we can actually make things better.
Right. I think the sport would be huge. I mean, they're like-minded.
Exactly. Yeah. Being in that environment where you're with other people who really get you. I mean, that alone is a healing process in itself, to be with other. When you feel isolated, or, as we talked about, having mental health issues, it's super powerful. And I think that's what makes our app unique, really.
Yeah. Someone gets me,
Yes. So. Yeah. And that's wonderful when you haven't had that for so long.
So you talked earlier about proprioception.
Yes.
How do you improve that?
Yes. I mean, so we know from research that people with hypermobility lack proprioception. Nobody really knows why we lack. Probably something to do with the feedback, the Gogli tendons in the joints. I mean, but nobody really knows. So it's an important factor to improve upon. So the way I do it, my method is very much about, rather than just teaching someone an exercise, like a mechanical exercise, it's about teaching people sensation. So a lot of my exercises, we start supine, lying on our backs, on the ground, lots of support, because that way people can start to actually feel the weight of their own body. We do very basic arm and leg movements, a bit like dead bug. Maybe you know dead bug.
Dead bug, yes.
Dead bug, yeah. So that's a great exercise for someone learning to feel, well, what does my arm feel like when I lift it up? Can I feel the arm bone dropping into the socket? Things like that. So we start to understand where our arm bones actually belong, because for a lot of us, our arm bones are dropping down out of the socket due to that laxity. So very safe if you're lying on your back doing exercises. And so we use gravity, we use our own body weight, and we start to feel the sensations of where our joints and our bones should be. And that has really, really helped people with their proprioception. As they get more confident, we change positions. So we take away some of that support. So maybe we lie on our side, maybe we go into quadruped, and eventually standing. Obviously, standing is the most challenging one for proprioception, because you've got no feedback. You're kind of on your own. You've got to know where your body is in space. So again, we build up to doing more challenging things.
Well, let's switch topics here a little bit. Can you provide your thoughts on fascia in treating EDS?
Yeah.
You seem to have a great appreciation for the role of it.
Yes, I do. And I watched your podcast with Dr. Robert Schleip.
Schleip, right?
Yes. And I've met him a couple of times. I go to the Fascia symposium events that we have over here in the UK. So I have met him. But yes, for me, I'm fascinated by fascia. It's our biggest sensory organ in the body. So in terms of proprioception and pain, it's obviously very, very important. But the reason I educate my sort of Zebra Club members and clients about this is, for most of us, we've been treated as a single body part area. So you've got a shoulder problem, you've got a hip problem, you've got a knee problem. Nobody's joined those dots and made us feel whole, or maybe just feel connected. So understanding fascia and the fact that it's this body-wide web, very strong and resilient, can be really helpful for people starting to understand, again, helping with their proprioception as well. If you start to feel that your body is connected.
Right.
And promoting, as I said earlier, we like to hang off our joints. So we're not feeling that elasticity of the tissue. But fascia, of course, is very elastic. And I like people to kind of try and experience that elastic recoil rather than going to end of range and hanging in a joint. We actually want you to come back from that end of range. Yep. And so having a little bit of knowledge around fascia, I think, is really, really important. So yeah, it's one of my favorite topics.
And that's part of your program, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So does nutrition play a role in EDS?
Yes, I mean, it's very important. Some people listening might be suffering from things like mast cell activation syndrome, which is another sort of comorbidity that can go with EDS. And that's when, if you think of hay fever, everyone knows kind of what hay fever is. If you think of having a hay fever reaction anywhere in your body, so that kind of inflammatory process, that can happen with people with EDS when those mast cells get overactive. So foods with a lot of histamine in them are going to trigger things like mast cell reactions. So that's one thing. We have a lot of gut issues with EDS, so having the right diet to help with gut motility and things like IBS and bloating and reflux. There's so many different things that have been going on. But unfortunately, I can't say that there's one diet that would fix all, because I'm sure there's not, because of the individual nature, again, of EDS. Somebody loves the FODMAP diet. Right. Someone else will hate the FODMAP diet. So yes, if people are struggling with nutrition, really try to find a nutritionist, a dietitian who knows about EDS, because it can make massive impacts on quality of life.
Sure. And we might want to mention too that you wrote about mast cells and POTS, POTS.
Yes. Yes.
It's on our website, bobbrad.com. So
yes,
check it out.
Yes, exactly. I just wanted to explain this thing that we call the terrible trifecta. So people have EDS with all its issues, but unfortunately, some people live with POTS, the postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and they live with this mast cell activation. So put those all together, and that's a lot of management.
A lot of things to deal with, yep.
Lots of things to deal with all at the same time. So thank you for letting me share that blog on your website.
Excellent.
Just to spread awareness of that. Because again, these are, especially mast cells, that's kind of the new kid on the block. Not a lot of people are talking about that. And so just to get awareness out there that actually this is it's not so rare. It's not that rare. A lot of people have it. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I mean, so we have some Facebook questions. We actually had a lot. I just grabbed a few of them.
Okay.
the question was, how do I find a balance between overstretching and just getting some relief from tight muscles? They go on and on, but
Yeah.
they're worried about the pain. Yeah.
Yes. So stretching. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, the thing with hypermobility is we have tight muscles. So although we're bendy in some places, you're also going to have tight muscles. Now those muscles are tight typically because they're hanging on for dear life. You know, that everything else is bendy, and some muscles have got to try and do the job of stabilizing. So they're going to get super tight. So the problem with going on and doing, so
makes sense.
So for me, for example, my hips, I'm pretty flexible in everywhere, but apart from my hips, they're super tight. So if I go and do a lot of static stretching on my hamstrings, around my hip flexors, and really stretch, because they feel tight, I will pay the price for it tomorrow, and I will have probably a lot of pain. So I don't recommend people do static stretching, even though they feel they need to, because they're looking for that release.
Right.
What I teach my clients is dynamic stretching. So more of a sort of a pandiculation type, sort of flossing the fascia and the tissue. So gently moving in and out of a stretch, but not going end of range so that you risk to overstrain, go too far. That's when we get the problems, because remember, we lack control and we lack proprioception. So it's easy to do too much. But if you're just gently flossing, you're not going to go into that risk of overstretching. So I would change the strategy there.
Sure. Makes sense. And there's going to be some overlap on these questions. But this one we talked about earlier, SI joint pain. I can't sleep at night. I can deal with other daily pains, but this one. So any recommendations?
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one. The SI joint can be so problematic, as we mentioned earlier. So, you know, think about what exercises you're doing. Are you doing things that you're doing lots of movements where your legs are going in opposite directions? Because that will be aggravate. So, for example, side lying exercises where maybe you're lifting and lowering the leg, and those should be avoided because they're separating that SI joint. So we don't want to be doing anything like that at the moment while you're in this sort of acute pain situation. Stick to keeping the pelvis as one piece and doing lots of stability work around that. By stability, I'm not talking core stability. So we don't want to be pulling in pelvic floor and transverse abdominis, because especially people with, I don't teach that to anyone, but with people with hypermobility, we don't want to be doing that because a tight pelvic floor can start pulling on your SI joint as well. So we don't want an over tight and hypertonic pelvic floor. So I talk about stability in the book and on YouTube. As I said, I did a whole video on stability, which would be really useful to watch to go with this question. But I don't advocate core stability training as such.
Sure. So that was a general stability, or was that SI stability?
Oh, that was general stability. Oh, gotcha. But there is going to be videos on YouTube as well about SI joint as well. So if you have a look on there.
Yeah, part of the problem is if you roll, it's actually going to give you problems. So it's going to wake you up.
So a lot of people sleep with big cushions, you know, like full length sausage cushions. A lot of people feel
they hug.
So that your knee isn't sort of flopping forward, and again you're opening up the joint. But it is a tricky one. So
again, some of these things you cover, right? Can you give us basic exercises to keep our muscles strong, enabling joints to stay in place?
Yes.
I often hurt myself while exercising.
Yeah. So before we think about strengthening, we've got to make sure that the alignment is correct. So doing a lot of those proprioceptive exercises on our back, supine, starting to feel the bones are in the right place. Then you can start doing your strengthening work, because there's no point trying to strengthen something that's not in the right place. You're just going to be making the situation worse. So maybe step back a little bit, just check, do some of those foundational exercises. And I've got a whole video on YouTube called Exercise Principles. So it's like a half-hour class, and we go through all of that. Where do I need to be? How should I be lying? How should I be sitting? Have a look at that and see if that helps you before you start doing the strengthening work.
Very well, thank you. So how often should someone with EDS exercise? I thought that was a great question.
It's a very good question. Little and often, certainly if you're starting out, because we tend to, if we're having a good day, we might go and do too much. We might do an hour, 2 hours worth of exercise, and then we'll get this boom and bust situation.
Sure. Yep.
So it's much better to do 5 minutes, maybe every other day. Some people need a rest day, which is fine. If some people can do every day, that's brilliant. Better to do 5 minutes every day than go and do an hour, have a boom and a bust and a flare up, and then not do anything for 3 weeks because you've. So we're looking for a gradient like this, which is very, very gentle, as opposed to up, down. So little and often, go low, go slow, and build up from your sort of happy baseline. And
prevent developing that fear of exercise that you talked about.
Exactly. Because the more you do your boom and busting, the more you're going to get afraid of exercising at all. And obviously exercise is a really, really important part of our management strategy of EDS. It really is. We need to move because we decondition much quicker than people without EDS. So if we decondition, it's going to be so much harder to climb back up and get going again. So little and often is the best recipe.
This next question, she said, I have CEDS and
yes.
MEDS. I don't know what
yes. Yeah.
And
okay.
They have severe pain about 6 hours after overdoing it, which for me can be very little. I've been told it's called DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, but other PTs say it's only for runners, not me. Is this part of an EDS?
Right. So, well, CEDS is classical EDS. So these are sort of the less sort of common. Hypermobile EDS is the most common. Yeah. So classical EDS has a lot of skin issues, a lot of sort of scarring issues, very delicate skin. And MEDS is myopathic EDS. So myo being muscle. And typically, they know, so early years, we start to get muscle weakness and then very, very tight muscles around sort of elbows, knees, the sort of periphery areas. So, yeah, so I've not ever heard of anyone having the two types, but together. But yes, so you say overdoing it. So, and I know you said that isn't very much. So we do get muscle soreness. Yeah. So we do get DOMS. It's not just runners who get that. So that would be a normal thing to have, but not if it's causing you severe pain. So I always recommend people have to find their baseline. And that is, how much exercise or movement can you do today that doesn't cause you severe pain the next day or 6 hours later? Now, for some people, that will be just one repetition of an exercise, and that's okay. That's their starting point. Okay, lots of my clients can only do 1 or 2 reps of an exercise, and that's fine. So we don't want people to be overdoing it and maybe doing 20, 30, 40 reps of an exercise and ending up in severe pain. So let's step back a little bit. Let's go back to that go low, go slow. And if we need to start at 1 rep and build up from 1 rep, that's absolutely fine. But if we keep going into severe pain, we're going to start sort of getting that nervous system agitated, and we don't want to be doing that. We want to keep calming things down.
Now, you already answered this one, I guess. Should a person with hypermobility stretch at all? Do you maybe mention which muscles tend to get tight?
Yeah. So
does that vary a lot?
It does vary a lot, but in what I've seen typically is that we tend to overuse our front body. So quads, hip flexors, pecs, abdominal muscles. We tend to kind of use that as a sort of a bracing pattern. So the front gets very tight. The posterior chain, so the back line, for most people I've ever met, is very, very weak. So we have weak hamstrings, weak glutes, weak upper back muscles, because everything's falling forward and we hang a lot. So our glutes the glutes never work because we lock our joints. So the glutes never have to work. So typically people feel that tightness around their shoulders, maybe around their hip flexors, and they want to go and stretch them. And that's where we want to focus on building tone in the back of the body, so the posterior chain, and dynamically moving the front body. So not overstretching your pecs, not overstretching your hip flexors, because that will just destabilize you. If those muscles are tight for a reason and you stretch and stretch and stretch, they're going to complain the next day for sure. And you don't want that.
They're going to let you know.
They'll definitely let you know. So you want to think about, it's all about balance, isn't it? So we want to balance between the back of the body and the front of the body. And we want them working together as a team, as opposed to one doing lots and lots of work and the back body not doing much at all. That's what we need to focus on.
So be very respectful of your time here. If someone wants to get a hold of you, it's through the website?
Yes. So Jeannie, www.jeanniedibon.com. So there's a contact form on there, or my email is jeannie@jeanniedibon.com. So either way comes through to me. And I've got all the information there about the Zebra Club or the Zebra Club, the books, and my clinics. So yeah, everything's on the website.
Yep, we got the book here, Hypermobility Without Tears. And she also has Pilates Without Tears.
Yes. Yeah.
And you got the YouTube channel with some says people can try.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, again, thank you, Jeannie, so much for taking time. Really learned a lot.
Thank you.
Great source of information. Thanks.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.